So on the face of it, it's actually looking very much like a sliding sash window. You've got a top and a bottom sash, which slide up and down, and a outer frame. Now this has been made in the style of a spiral balanced sash window. So it's got the narrow pieces of timber at the sides instead of the big heavy box sections that the traditional weighted box sash window would have. So the spiral balance looks something like this, and it's just a long tube with a big spring inside. I can't pull them out because they're quite tight, but they come in various lengths to whatever suits your window. And if you go on Mighton Products website, they sponsored the channel in the past. They're the place to go for anything like that to do with spiral balances or weighted sash windows. So I've got a few of them windows sat over here for the back elevation of a house. But we had these two windows up in the attic, which the customer was very adamant he wanted them to be top opening so they could be left open, but also we wanted to be able to get out of them in an emergency scenario. And the trouble with a sash window is, especially one on spiral balances, is the limiting amount of opening you'll get on a single window like this. So these two short panes, that bottom pane may only open up to sort of 7/8 of the size of the sash. So somewhere to around here in height is sort of the max that would open up. And it's quite limited in the size of the opening that you could actually escape from if you had to. So to keep his ideas of a top hung window that was easy to escape from in mind, along with it being aesthetically it looking exactly the same as the other windows on that elevation, so they look like sash windows, I went onto the drawing board and came up with an idea of a top hung window that looks identical to a sash. I don't think this is really a commercially viable thing to be producing, but sort of there's a niceness about this window in how it looks and how it operates versus a sash window, which there is something in this. I've not seen anyone else doing this, but yeah, there's definitely something in it that's quite nice about it. The purpose of this video is just to give you a little bit of a tour around it. If you wanted to do something like this yourself, then just to show you basically how I ended up achieving the results I've got here, and you could try and copy it yourselves if you wish to. So the basic construction of it is just a normal square frame. You've grooved in some friction hinges that you might see on a PVC window. Basically, yeah, made a huge casement that connects a top and a bottom sash together that looks something like this. So the frame is very much, like I've said, square section timber. I just dominoed it together at the top for simplicity and notched at the bottom. Exactly the same construction method as a spiral balanced sash window. So you've got your outer frame section where your sash would run up against, and then your square piece of timber. But there's no draft grooves or anything in it. It's just very much plain because it doesn't serve. It's just a visual thing to be in place. There's no purpose of these grooves or anything like that. Very, very simple initial construction. Then we set about making the sash. So the biggest design element is connecting the two sashes together. I sort of started looking at them as two separate sashes, so a bottom sash and a top sash, trying to join them together maybe with a board on the outside, but everything was getting very heavy in this plane here. So visually, as you looked at the window from the inside or the outside, the stiles were getting thicker and thicker as I designed whatever I could do to take just the two normal sashes and add a piece on. So I came up with the idea of just having that as an individual piece of timber and jointing a solid middle railing. Although it looks like two bits and pieces, it's just a shallow groove in here. That is a square piece of 40mm timber, and jointing a bottom railing as normal. And then the top section actually returns around, so you've got like a normal top rail glued to an infill to bring it all flush so it meets the draft seal, and that's your draft seal for the whole window that runs around the inside. And the size that I made that sash is basically the size of the clear inside width of these outer pieces, which is quite unusual really, but it's obviously got to fly past them as it opens. That's like your your casement gap almost. And then the height is obviously the normal sill height of a sash window where you would measure to, and the top is the same as well. The top is up to the inside of this staff bead here. But then for the sides, because we're flying past this, we needed to bulk the inside out and where the hinge sits. So I've added a separate piece of timber in afterwards to bulk that out, so that actually shows through on the inside here as well. So it's thickened the jambs of the frame by that amount of material, and that allows the hinges to work. So you get you're able to groove the hinges in, and I had to make the clearance for the hinge by rebating the back of the casing. The rebate obviously shows on the back, but I stopped it halfway down with a nice sort of curve on the spindle, like so, both sides. And that gives me a clearance for the friction hinges to work. But obviously being a rebate on the outside, the gap is very much, it's visible, but it looks like the shadow you get from the back of this piece of timber anyway. So it doesn't look, when you sit it side of a different sash, it doesn't look any different from the normal sash window. So it's actually really effective how good this looks from the outside. And just a final little touch I did at the bottom was to cut a parting bead down and glued it on the front of that piece of timber. I think next time I do it, I could almost incorporate that all in a single piece of timber. But yeah, there's a little parting bead on there as well, so it even looks like the bottom sash is tucked behind a parting bead, like so. Did have to take quite a heavy notch or chamfer off the top of the sash, and it probably needs a little bit more before I get that to paint, as when it closes it gets very close to touching that bit of wood. But again, you don't really see it, even if there's a gap there and it closes up to there, it just looks like shadowing from that top rail. So yeah, very, very effective, and it seems to have turned out really well. I was a little bit worried about this one in terms of I was experimenting whilst making something for a customer. So it's kind of got to go well first time or it gets very expensive. So pretty pleased that it has actually worked out. For the securing mechanism, gone with what the customer wanted, which is a spaniolet locking system, and it's a chute bolt that will shoot into the sides of the window like so. There the ends of the tenons poking through. And we've got a twin keep in there, so we can lock it against the draft seal when the draft seal's in place, or we can lock it in a vented position so we've got trickle ventilation around the window at the same time. Glazing beads I've cut in will look something like that. Still got to sand these up a little bit, but they are proper moulded glazing beads, and there's scribe bars that will go onto the glass once that's been fitted. So the build up around there will look something along them lines. So it looked quite smart. That sort of defines the top sash against that plate that we've added in, that's extra to a normal sash window. So it's about the only visual difference is the handle and the fact that this, above this sash here, is built up thicker than a traditional sash window would be. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the results of how that's turned out. I really like it. It's a lovely window, and let me know your thoughts about it as well. So yeah, it's a really nice little window. I quite enjoyed making it, and did a little bit of a challenge with the drawings, trying to get it to work and get it ultimately to look just like a sash window was the tricky bit, and I think we've got there. So stay tuned on the channel. I'll get some images of it when they're all fitted. We can pan across them all and see if you can tell the difference from the outside. But as always, love to know your thoughts on what I've done here and what I've been up to. And keep your eyes peeled for a couple of cool videos on the channel coming up.